Have I been gone?
You're back.
Oh, did you hear me or no?
No, we didn't record you. We didn't hear anything.
No.
My name is Sarah Davies. I'm the Director of Communications and Media at earthday.org. And with us today, we have Diane Wilson. Diane, I know you're going to be embarrassed when I say this, but you are a bit of a legend in the environmental movement, a former shrimp fisherwoman who basically took on Formosa Plastics, one of the world's leading petrochemical companies, for the illegal dumping of toxic plastic waste in the waters that you used to fish around in the Texas Gulf. And you won in 2019 $50 million settlement. It's the largest award a citizen has ever won in an industrial polluter case under the Clean Water Act. So it really was a hell of an achievement.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So look, before we get into too much of the detail, I just wanted you to give us a snapshot of what your life was like before all of this, struggle essentially with Formosa started.
Well, I'm a fourth generation fisherwoman. My father, my brothers, my uncles, my grandfather, my grandfather, they were all commercial fishermen. And our family has lived in this area on the mid-Texas Gulf Coast about 135 years. Most boat captains, especially bay shrimpers, is like they use their children as deckhands. To be good at it, you had to have a sense of where the shrimp went. And I remember one shrimper, he laid on top of the shrimp and he was laying there and he was like trying to get a sense of where they were moving and where they were going to, and it was a way of communicating with the shrimp. And they literally, I think the good ones really had a sense and could almost have this connection, this almost a spiritual connection with what the bay was doing, what it was saying.
What started happening that started alerting you to the fact that there was something wrong?
I was running a fish house and I had all of these dead dolphins that was showing up on the bays. They were showing up San Antonio Bay, Spirit Center Bay, Matagorda Bay, and it was the largest dolphin die-off in the mammal stranding network's history. There were more vultures on the beach than there were seabirds because of all of these dolphins that were dying. And I do know, I would have some fin fishermen that were fishing up the river, and they would come to me to get ice for their fish, and they would say the alligators were rolling in the water at the top. They were just rolling. And the fish were acting so strange, they could reach down and pick them up.
Then. So you knew at that point, that something was happening.
This was before industry ever had to report their emissions. So you would have factories out there, but a citizen who lived around the factories did not have a right to call up the industry and say, what are you putting in the water?
For people watching at home too, what were you knew there were chemicals going in there. Did you know at this point what the chemicals were? My understanding, it was polyvinyl chloride, polypropylene, polyethylene, all the kind of stuff that's used for plastic bags and plastic straws and plastic pipes. And is that what you discovered was going into the water then?
I was a fisherwoman. I knew nets. I knew how to rig up a shrimp boat. I knew how to work on a diesel engine. I knew where you could go to catch shrimp. I knew zero about industry, where they were at, what they were putting out, what was a wastewater permit. I have no idea. I knew nothing. I was probably the most ignorant person you could even imagine.
So how did that Diane, the Diane who was happily fishing and saw dolphins and everything was great, how did that Diane who lived that life, and then the one that started seeing dead animals, I presume the shrimp started dying off, it affected your business. How did you start really digging into what was going on with the factory? How did that Diane get born in a way?
Well, what happened was, and to me, when I look back on it, it was almost like fateful, because I had a shrimper. I was working inside the fish house handling all these boats. And, and we knew things were going on, but we had no information and no way of getting information. And then there was this front page article about us being number one in the country on toxic waste. So I acted totally out of character. I am a full-blown introvert. I love silence. I love being by myself. I'm very comfortable being by myself or on the boat,
Right.
and I acted totally out of character. And I went down to the city hall and I said, I want to have this meeting in this little community building that was right off City Hall. And I said, I want to have a meeting about this information. And so they wrote it down that I could have a meeting. And the very next day, I had the lady, the city secretary, come down to the fish house and said, Diane, you can't do this. You can't do this. This is red flags. This is red flags. And I'm like,
wow.
I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, red flags about what? Why? And she just kept, it's red flags. It's red flags. You can't do it. And they wouldn't let me have the meeting there. They said, don't do it. And
what did they mean red flags? Did they mean that they were going to upset the plastic industry? What does that mean?
I had no idea what they were talking about. You got to remember, I was a very quiet, unassuming person who did not talk very much. And my life was the bay and the fisherman and the nets.
Right, and your family.
And my kids. Yeah. And suddenly, I got these people saying, you can't have this meeting to talk about it. And then I had the bank president in a 3-piece suit and shiny black shoes. He came down to the fish house, and I was out on the dock. I had never talked to that guy a day in my life. And he came down there and he said, Diane, are you starting to get a vigilante group to roast industry alive? And I'm like, what? I had no idea what on earth he was talking about. And I'm like, I'm just having a meeting, and I have not even had the meeting. And before you know it, then my brothers, who were shrimpers, they got calls and said, you better take care of your sister. And so my brothers came down there and like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I didn't do nothing. I haven't did nothing. And but eventually I did the meeting anyway, because I don't like
pressuring you,
telling me what I got to do. And what was going on was, we were not only ranking number one in the nation, but it was at that exact time that Formosa Plastics was doing the biggest plastic expansion in Texas history. All I really had was an instinct about doing the right thing, and people were really upset that I was even have a meeting. And when I asked for a permit hearing on Formosa Plastics air permits, I mean, that's when I started having people economic development. I even had the plant manager, and I didn't even know where Formosa Plastic was. And here comes the plant manager arriving at the fish house. And a lot of it, I was like, I could not figure out what was going on. I I didn't know enough to even know what was going on. And I remember I did a Freedom of Information request from the EPA because I wanted
You
to
did
know
that.
what was
You
going
did
on.
that.
And
How did you
I
know to
did
do
that. I
that?
did it. I don't know. Someone said do a Freedom of Information, so I did. And believe it or not, they sent me a stack foot high, and it took me a year to understand what those documents said. A year, because I knew nothing. I really, frankly, knew nothing. But I learned quick.
I'd love to know, first off, what did you discover they were putting into the water? And I would love you to mention here, Diane, the nurdles, because I don't think people really know about these things. I think they think plastic is made on big sheets or something. And tell me about
Yeah.
what you discovered was going into the bay and what was polluting it.
The factory was using a cocktail of chemicals, very toxic chemicals that were making plastic pellets or noodles and plastic powder or resin. And it was polypropylene, polyethylene, PVC, SPVC, and it was going into the water, it was going into the bay, it was going into the air, it was everywhere.
And it was that toxic chemical waste that was killing the dolphins, killing the shrimp, and having a direct impact on your livelihood and everybody else's.
I know when the federal judge made a ruling on all of Formosa's 2,500 pieces of evidence against him, he stated in his ruling that Formosa had damaged the commercial fisheries in Lavaca Bay.
How, as I'm sitting here, like listening to you, to find the strength to do what you did, to go through all the documentation that the EP sent you when you foiled them, to get the local community to rally around you in the end and understand what you were doing was for them. How did you find the strength to do that? How did you win people over? And just how did you find the courage to keep going?
I think the way I have kept going is I really have a deep connection with the water. I have been on it my whole life, and I think it is almost a spiritual connection. And to me, it is alive and it is like family. So my deal has never been, well, it's my livelihood. Mine is not only it's the livelihood for me and my family and my community of fishermen, but I cared what they were doing to that bay, and I took it very, very personal. And I know when we won the lawsuit, and we had the sit down and had a settlement agreement with Formosa Plastics. Only one woman showed up. She was a Taiwanese American Formosa upper management from New Jersey. And when I walked into that room, she looked at me and said, "You are very persistent." And so I was very, very persistent.
That's an understatement.
They did. They called me very persistent, and a lot of people called me crazy. They really did. They said, she's just crazy, because I've been doing it for 35 years.
You want to tell me what you want?
Yeah. Okay. After approximately 30 years of fighting them, I did get the Texas Rio Grande legal aid, and we collected the evidence, and we went to court, and we won.
How much did you win in settlement? Because it's pretty staggering.
Yeah, we won $50 million as a settlement. Then we got zero discharge of plastics from their facility. Then we got monitoring of their discharge. We got enforcement from their violations. We got cleanup, and we have which is real interesting. We are involved in refitting a plastic plant to make it zero discharge. So there's this whole engineering component. There's a whole cleanup of all the plastic waste out there that's ongoing currently right now. And there's all of this monitoring and enforcement that we have ongoing.
Okay, so what happened to the settlement? Was it shared amongst the fishermen, or did it go into a trust? What's that money used for now? I know you didn't benefit from it, but what happened to the money?
The settlement, we did a consent decree. And what's just important about that is that it is enforceable. If all of these provisions, if Formosa does not do them, we take them back to court. That was key. And then with the 50 million, we put it in a trust. It's called the Lavaca Bay Mitigation Trust. And we figured out things where we were going to give that money to put it in the community.
What would you say to people who are listening to you now who might have, they might be next to a factory that's doing something that, they shouldn't be doing. They might be coping with an industry that's, putting waste, plastic or otherwise, into their local community, and they're feeling pretty helpless. What's your advice to them?
I believe we all have a destiny. There is a point in life where something will come up and you will instinctively know that you should act. And if you act, it will change your life. And it's like most people, I've had women come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm not that type. I don't have that." And it's like, no. You can, we limit who we are by our beliefs on what we're capable of. I think we're all very bright stars out there, and we have much capability to do this. And I just believe we're very too well behaved. I think we're too well behaved.
So your message is, don't be well behaved.
Don't be well behaved. That's right. That's right. That's it. That's my key. I do believe that it's the people that have the power. I truly believe that.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I mean, honestly, you really are inspiring. I don't know where you get the energy from, but it's really remarkable what you've achieved. And, I can imagine one day they'll make a movie of your life. Like, you'll be the Erin Brockovich of the shrimping world.
You're kind. You're very kind.
It's true. It's remarkable. We wish you lots of success in all the other projects that you're going to do. I know that we'll stay in touch, but thank you so much for joining us today on 22 Minutes. We've really enjoyed having you.
My pleasure. It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.